Okay, let's see, and we're live. Okay, hello and welcome to this live stream. Yes, so in this live stream we're going to talk about Project Windhorse, and what you can see in the title is the ecosystems of wicked solutions. And part of this is based on the ecosystems of wicked problems that is described in the description below. There's a link in the description that talks about exactly this. And that's based on the work of Christian Sarkar and Philip Kotler. And based on that, and also my own Jungian insight, and having been personally involved in the culture war and what's going on, based on these insights and many more, I've come up with at least partial idea of how one could tackle this, and this is very much what I'm going to talk about in this live stream. Very much so. And as we all know, there's all this division going on, and there's all these problems going on. Not just in a political sense, in a social sense, in a environmental sense. There's many problems, and the thing is that we can try to tackle these problems one thing at a time, but the thing is that they're very much interconnected, very much so. And how we behave, how we interact with the world ripples out onto everything. Our inner psychological state affects how we relate to nature, how we relate to the world, how we relate to others, and that affects others, and then that affects their psychological state and their state as well, and this ripples out. Which is where I want to introduce the idea of Project Windhorse and what this is all about. But first I want to go into kind of one of the things that is going on, which I already talked about before in the video about the Koryos and transformation that I talked about, where I talked about unintegrated instinct and how that goes through being concealed by Adler, by the Adlerian power drive, being concealed, and I'm going up towards ego inflation. So regarding that, we have an intellectual side and we have ego consciousness, and then we have the lower base regarding that would be instinct. And if one is disconnected from instinct, basically, living mostly in the sphere of the mind, or it could also be a fantasy world in some sense as well. Then, it can manifest itself like that, but it can also manifest itself through a distorted power drive. And that manifests itself in many ways, where relating in of itself then becomes impossible, because if there's not this coming together of the intellect and an instinct, and this kind of comes up in an unintegrated manner, this distorts not just the archetypal energies, so the deeper kind of human patterns that exist within us. If they're not integrated, they because they're still there, and then they manifest themselves in a distorted manner, which creates a general disconnect, to ourselves, but also to others, and then relating in the sense to ourselves or to others becomes more difficult. And one of the big things regarding that is very much trauma that creates this kind of disconnect, especially parental complexes. Wait, that's the perfect one. And regarding that, very much, you can see Koryos here, for instance, but also the Lamia. That would be, like I said in the parental complex video, I talked about both Koryos and the Lamia, but also, the Siren and the Giants and such. And when it comes to both the Lamia and Koryos, well, it is very much, these parental complexes that end up both disconnecting us from instinct and at the same time create this blockage within ourselves where we've become disconnected from the sense of self, where you can see this in a lot of individuals where they become dependent upon others or upon some group, or very much enmeshed with either someone in a relationship, or in another sense also just again in some group or figure that they project upon. And that's also one big thing that's going on regarding the whole culture war as well, where the kind of that what was missed within childhood gets projected upon an external figure. Similarly with the sage archetype, like the wise old man, the wise old woman, it gets projected upon these figures, where we are starting to seek these things externally, where we're not connecting to our own inner wisdom. And generally, it's a big thing that just exists because of how things are in the culture, which has snowballed from all the way roughly from 13 to 1400 AD onward, where a lot of these wisdom traditions that we had that in some way would connect us to the inner wisdom was lost. Where, Carl Jung, for instance, tried to, in his own way, bring some of this wisdom back, even though it's still not exactly... there is an interest growing, and it's a very much a good sign. But also very much what is still important in that matter is that, there really is a need to do shadow work on a much deeper level than what people think about regarding not just, just some dark behaviors or something. It's not just that, but it's also trauma. It's personal trauma, generational trauma. It involves a lot, and it's and it goes all the way. You can see the Kraken and the World Serpent. Those are symbols of very much the collective shadow. And the collective shadow, that's kind of what we're going into with regarding to Project Windhorse. But the collective shadow here, you can see Koryos here, the giants, Koryos being the negative father complex, the Lamia here being the negative mother complex, the Siren, the negative anima, and the giants, the negative animus. And then, then you have the serpent and the dragon, the dragon being the... you can think about the dragon hoarding the gold. It's the stagnant waters that can both exist within the person but also within society, where there's this sense of stagnancy there, where this kind of behavior can be it can be something psychological, but it also can manifest itself in behavior where people hoard either knowledge or money or goods or whatever to create some false sense of security. And the thing is that when it comes to this and these manifestations, a lot of that at its root, it's psychological, what is going on. And when, like I pointed out here, with this, if there's this disconnect, you have intellect and instinct, and then it becomes all distorted through this power drive, that starts to play out in behavior. So, you get this kind of Kronos kind of behavior in a parent. For instance, one's dad, for instance. You get that kind of behavior, and that kind of that has an effect on one's child. So if one is a kid and has such a father figure that is this devouring figure, like how I went into it much deeper into it regarding that other video that I did regarding parental complexes, but there's definitely that going on, and really the problem isn't actually the dad as much, it's the behavior. It's the behavior that's the problem, and the behavior creates the complex, and that creates this blockage. And that can then manifest itself in all kinds of behavior. And I saw in the Fox, for instance, also Floor post something regarding these men that act like children. And the thing is, it's very easy also to see, like, yes, there's that behavior there, but it's also important to understand regarding that yes, I mean, a lot of the behavior that comes out of this distorted behavior because of this disconnect that is there is not good and healthy behavior. But also the thing is that what we're seeing is these myriad of coping mechanisms playing out that might have worked for them in the past as a child in some way, but isn't working now. And the thing is that there's a real need to actually work regarding that, to actually go in there and go in here. Where you can see Skyfather, Sovereignty Goddess, and Koryos and Archetypes and the nymphs, where you see the heroes come as the coming together of the opposites, where we take up the sword and we venture into the forest, we venture into the unconscious, into the abyss, into the darkness, where we face all of it. And that's very much important regarding how to start to tackle it, because the first layer regarding the culture war, and I can speak here from experience, is to tackle personal trauma. Because the thing is that the trauma that is there manifests itself in behaviors, and the way we see the world. And if we work on that, how we see the world starts to change. And at the same time, if we work on that and we work through these complexes, we work through the trauma and these behavior patterns that are there, we also simultaneously take away the power that something like the World Serpent, or here the Kraken, so the collective shadow, has. Because the collective shadow, what it really boils down to is the shared behaviors of the entire group of people, and that's what it is. And that has its own kind of consciousness of sorts, because it steers everything towards a certain direction. But if we start to work through it, then we can bring that's what's been in the dark to the light, and then we can start to transmute it. Because the thing is that, yes, there's the negative father archetype, for instance. Here, this negative father complex. But, there's the father archetype as well, for instance, which, like think Sky Father, that has both the light and the dark. And if we can work through that, then we can tap into that in ourselves. It's the same thing with the wise old woman and the wise old man too. We can then tap into that ourselves, so we do not project that outward onto the world. Because that's something that ends up happening. We shadow project all these different things onto the world, and we then do not see. We do not see the world exactly as it is. Not really. Like, yeah, but there's definitely bad behaviors going on, and there's definitely a lot of bad shit going on. But the thing is that it's also as important to start to realize like how the trauma that one has and that what is repressed in the unconscious, it doesn't even have to be trauma, but just that what is repressed in the unconscious, how that impacts one and impacts others, and how that inform, or like, it subtly controls one's behavior in a way that we do not notice until we, start to become aware of it. Yeah, and you're seeing here with Christianity and that all. I'm actually made that to compare what I'm doing versus Jonathan Peugeot, but that aside, that's not as important. But yes. But coming to that on a bigger and deeper level, when we really like think about it, and see here this map, and this map is based on the work regarding the wicked problems. There's all these different problems that are there, and I've added onto it, and then gonna open it for myself so I can see it better. So now, very much on the top left, we see insecure attachment styles. We see childhood trauma, negative animus, negative anima, and then we see gender politics. And the thing is that, well, maybe not everything is, but a lot of our behavior, like how we act out towards men and women, for instance, just to give an example, is informed due to what we've learned in childhood. And the attachment styles that we have, and that can impact how we relate later in life regarding, even things such as the opposite sex, and and the thing is that it's important to keep that in mind, because yes, there's these behaviors that are happening on all these different sites in the culture war, and there's all these things going on. But what I feel like also needs to be thought about is the following: that a lot of negative behaviors, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, tend to be boiled. You can trace them back towards childhood. You can trace them back towards, not just childhood. There's other things that happen too. But there's all these things that generally are not addressed because they fall generally below the threshold for psychologists, that not much gets done about. People walk around with it and it doesn't get addressed. And very much those things, like they compound upon each other too. Because the thing is, that this is not just this one generation, but it's a generational thing. It's every generation has a little bit of something, and that compounds upon each other. And the thing is that why are things the way they are? Because, well, these things have compounded upon a very, very, very long time. That things have not been dealt with. And everyone has their own form of trauma. It doesn't have to be big T trauma. It can be small T trauma as well. Just emotional neglect, or or just long-term behavior that isn't generally very big kind of traumatic thing, like, I don't know, physical abuse or something. But but still, those things have an effect long term. Those the smaller things, such as regarding, like more the emotions, for instance, or the way one is spoken to as a child that creates a particular relationship with one's emotional side, for instance. And the thing is that this can create both a negative anima or negative animus, where most of the time, speaking here from the perspective of a man here, prolonged trauma can push the anima into the shadow. It can lead to the rejection of it, which leads to the creation of a negative anima. When there's the parental complex, for instance, at play, or just other kind of trauma, it depends. Which has an which also boils down to what we can talk about regarding insecure attachment styles. There's the anxious attachment style, there's the avoidant attachment style, there's the fearful avoidant as well. And these different attachment styles have, I really recommend looking them up for yourself as well. And they have an effect upon how we relate to others and to the opposite sex, and think about romantic sense, but not just that, but also just when it comes to friends, family. There's all kinds of different attachment styles that we have. Some can be secure, some can be not secure, they can be insecure. And these things, how we relate to others, then start to, in a grander scale, start to impact the whole thing regarding gender, and then you that plays into the whole gender politics debacle, which can exacerbate the what's going on. It's like, there's stuff going on, but at the same time, these issues also need to be addressed, and these are things that need to be addressed in an internal sense. Similarly here with the shadow warrior, for instance, which can be from, for instance, childhood trauma, and the negative anima can be a manifestation of that, where the warrior archetype gets distorted, where the anima gets pushed into the shadow, and then you get this very hyper masculine display. Think Giga Chat. And then the feminine gets completely, in that sense, within the individual itself, gets pushed into the shadow, and then that's that. But it becomes imbalanced. It can become imbalanced. Similarly, if there's a disconnect with instinct too, then the warrior archetype can manifest itself in a distorted manner, where it becomes, there's kind of like a disconnect, it's in the shadow. It's the shadow warrior. There's a disconnect with the full archetype itself, where then it starts to go out into the world in a very aggressive manner, where it's not balanced, because there needs to be, that from a Jungian lens, there needs to be this balance between both the masculine and the feminine within oneself. The emotional, the intellectual, the instinctual, intuition. So, and that, and the relationship with the unconscious. So there's an actual relationship going on between consciousness and the archetypes that are within the collective unconscious. And if that relationship is not there, and we've been disconnected from instinct, then it can start to manifest itself in a destructive manner. Similarly with the rebel, the visionary as well, the sage, the king archetype, is to name a few. There's many more archetypes too. And the thing is, regarding this also, with the rebel, for instance, it can go into tearing down things just for the sake of tearing down, the visionary just going full on towards the future. Because the thing is that we are not just singular archetype, we possess many. And the thing is that then we can become possessed by such an archetype, by an idea, and then we don't even know it, and we just go with it, and then we lose ourselves in the process, our sense of self, and we get taken over, and then we go and we move towards some kind of direction that seems to have a big hold over us, where we don't stop and actually think, where are we going? Why are we doing this? Because we're so grabbed by this archetype that we're not realizing what we're doing. It's like one of the ways how to know that is that if one becomes very much I don't know, I guess you could see it as passionate, like, personally you would see it as, you're very passionate about something. You can't stop talking about a certain subject. And the thing is that when that kind of thing happens, it's actually good to take a step back and to actually be like, wait, because it might actually mean that one has to integrate that into one's own life and actually do something with it in a personal sense. When an idea becomes very powerful and then goes into the realm of ideas, because that boils back down to this too. Because Jung represents this sense, which with the ideas, where then the instinctual drive, this connection, that what is connected to the archetype boils up and goes through that Lyrian power drive up to the realm of ideas, and then one becomes possessed by this idea, and then what ends up happening is that eventually, when it has run its course, and because the archetype inflates the ego in all this excess energy that goes into it, and then that happens, and then eventually either something externally or internally happens, and then the inflated ego goes whoop. It deflates through something that happens, often externally, and then suddenly you fall out of that state and end up very much in generally a depressed state. And that's something to be very wary of, especially when you start to notice that in yourself. Because if you start to notice that, you have to go trace that back into the unconscious. Be like, where is this coming from? And what does that mean for me? But coming back to this also, you can also then see here regarding, for instance, the Shadow King, you can see Aragorn here, but also the Fox. The Fox is the trickster archetype, and then also the Aragorn here is the King archetype in its full expression. I have two videos regarding that, one by myself and another with Boomstrom, where we talk about the King archetype. And that's something to integrate into one's own being. It's for men and women. It's a sovereign archetype, and it's something to embody oneself, to tap into that within oneself, and also to not take things seriously all the time either, because there needs to be that balance between the king archetype, the sovereign archetype, and this sense of playfulness and this sense of being able to joke about things and about oneself, to not take oneself too seriously. And you can also see then the wind horse symbol here, and then the round table. And when it comes to that, one thing that's very much important regarding that is, this idea of the round table concept, of this coming together of these diverse perspectives, which is very much important regarding that. But I want to go deeper into that regarding the Koryos model itself. Still, Wind Horse, being this symbol of transformation of the shadow into the light, to bring that what is in the shadow up to consciousness and to transmute it, to make for instance, the shadow warrior into the expression of the warrior, the shadow visionary into the expression of the visionary, for instance, or the shadow king into the king. To just give some examples regarding that. And the thing is that, if we start to tackle that on a personal level, we can then also, it starts to ripple out in an interpersonal manner, which starts to ripple out then further and further. If we can first tackle it on a personal level, we can then come together and we can start to tackle that on a larger and larger scale, and we can then start to tackle it on a social and a cultural, and then even maybe in the future, in some sense, some people could do it on a political scale. You can start to address this in a multiple level approach, where you start off at the very bottom. You start off with the childhood trauma, the insecure attachment styles, how we relate as a person to the world. We start to address that. But also, if you think about it, regarding, for instance, environmental degradation here that you can also see. And pollution, where does that come from? You can see here pollution, consumerism, links to materialism, links to collective shadow. Why? Well, it's actually very simple. Because of things such as, for instance, the trauma that's there, this disconnect with the self, and there's this general lack of actually going deep into the unconscious to actually address it at the very root, instead of trying to temporarily solve it with pills or other such means. There's a lot of that going on. That the service level approach of trying to solve these problems, and it's very much, it's needs to be addressed first on a personal, deep level, where one goes into the unconscious to face what's there, and then from that perspective, one can then start to tackle all these other things as well, one point at a time. Because if we don't address that, and then there's a sense of soul loss, and we are gonna go into that in an upcoming stream, then this can translate itself in, for instance, depression, or this inner hole that we feel, and that then gets expressed in a myriad of things. There's disconnect can create this sense of fear that goes into, for instance, eventually into political polarization, because there's this sense of fear, and then that gets pointed towards this or that, what's the other. So it goes into that, and cultural polarization too. But then, there's also this, from the collective shadow, it can go into materialism as well, and consumerism, where we try to fill this inner hole with some outer shape, and instead of this inner issue being addressed, we try to address it outwardly. But by trying to address it outwardly through either materialism or consumerism, leads to pollution, leads to environmental degradation. But it also here you can see globalization leads to this whole too big to fail stuff, the tax avoidance, the excessive CEO pay, the profit maximization, outsourced jobs, job loss, lobbying, and all the other stuff that snowballs all off from this. Similarly with the pollution, environmental degradation, the climate events that creates the refugees, and that also creates a lot of stress. And there's a lot of people, for instance, I see and know this on LinkedIn that speak about all this climate change stress that's going on. So there's all that stuff that some people talk about as well. Then with the Shadow Warrior, there's this sense of unbalanced nationalism that can manifest itself in the sense of, this war drive as well. Especially also with the collective shadow and all this political polarization that's occurring as well. And the thing is that it's important to very much tackle that at these key points within individuals. Because the thing is that we really cannot just tackle it on some surface level, on a we can start to try to fight like income inequality, or we can be like try to do something about job loss or stuff like. Yes, those are important things to do, definitely, but we also have to tackle things such as materialism, consumerism, or the pollution, and all of these other things that play into everything else. And if we don't tackle these, and on a deeper and a more personal layer, that's what's in going on within ourselves, then that starts to keep playing into this very issue that we're trying to solve. Because it starts to become then that we're trying to solve an issue. Well, the tap is still open, the water is still running, and we're still mopping, and we're mopping, and we're mopping, and it's just like, well, nothing is happening. It's not being solved, and the very thing is like, well, as long as we do not address this inner issue, and thus also how we relate to the world, we're basically, how this old Chinese saying goes, it's basically like using it's like the wrong man using the right tools in the wrong means, something. Right, I have to look that one up. Floor, how can we get this excessive CEO pay? And industrial military complex. That's quite a complex to get rid of, Floor. The industrial military complex. But yeah, here it is. Yeah, so there's this old Taoist text that says, when the wrong man uses the right means work in the wrong way. And that's very much the issue right now. And also, yeah, what's just going on? Because the thing is that we cannot solve the issues that are there because of the way we're doing that, with the way we're doing things. It's like we cannot, because how we're doing things is creating the problems, and as hence the tools we use in that sense cannot solve the problem, because we first need to rethink how we do things. And it's the rethinking, we have this shift and then we can start to actually do something in an effective manner. But it also boils down in that sense, because the thing is that yes, there's this personal, in the personal sense, something very much necessary. But the thing is that we definitely cannot do these things alone, and that's regarding Project Windhorse, where I want to talk about the Koryos pack model as well, regarding that. Because the thing is that we cannot do this, we cannot do these things by ourselves. Even though there's these, the personal layer regarding that, there's the higher layers as well, and we cannot solve these things by ourselves. We're not all knowing, we do not know everything, so it then becomes also important to start to work together with others to actually tackle these issues. But this can't be just a coming together blindly around an idea and to be like, okay, well, we have the solutions or whatever, and then this ideology or this idea or whatever is going to solve everything. No, it's similarly with this. It requires the coming together of individuals and to actually be like, okay, so yes, there's these issues on a personal level and on a collective level and such. And then in a pragmatic manner, try to find solutions that can be translated to the individual on an individual level. Because the thing is that for a lot of the issues, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. It just doesn't exist. It's similarly the case when, just take, for instance, the thing regarding the environment as well. There's no one-size-fits-all solution for that as well. Similarly, it's with individuals and whatever is going on psychologically with them, like the trauma they have or whatever is going on. It's all individual, and it's all regional regarding the environment. And whatever solution or whatever plant or whatever strategy works in one thing doesn't work in another situation or with another person. So there needs to be a lot of flexibility there. Even though, it's good to have a core structure, like you can see here with the Basileus, so the leader of the Koryos pack, the inner core, the round table knights, being the dedicated people that are dedicated towards the exploration of ideas, this coming together, and to keep the structure up, and then the flexible outer layer being the people that come and go and are maybe not as capable of being involved. Because the thing is that not everyone has that amount of time or is always capable of doing such to work towards certain things. One can't expect that of people. And the thing is that, but it's still important for there to be some sense of inner core, with the round table knights as well. But regarding that, but regarding the name of the round table knights, for instance, it's after the round table. And regarding the Koryos pack model itself, it's very much important also to approach it from that perspective. Right, I can see if I have it here. Yes, the core principles of the Koryos pack model. So collaboration and unity, for first of all, is a very important one. And a sense of unity is not to be understood to just blindly follow an idea, but there still needs to be an overarching goal of something that one is working towards. For myself, it would be truth that I see as wholeness, and that's kind of regarding the original model, what I have on top. And then thus with the Roundtable podcast and what we're doing, this exploration of ideas, where we're venturing into territory that is outside the territory that, I don't know, some people are comfortable going into, because all we need to go into these territories, because it's important to do so, to start to question things, because we cannot just blindly follow something, or to blindly follow just some individual that we see as a sage or whatever. It's like, no, we cannot do that. That's also where point 2 comes in, regarding individual empowerment and authenticity. Because it's very much important regarding that also to empower each other, to have empowered individuals, to have people that are authentic, dare to say the truth, dare to bring what they can bring, that comes out of their actual potential, that one is not trying to be like, no, you need to do these things. If they're not good at it, they're not good at it. It's about seeing what their strengths are, what they can bring in whatever way, and then they can help in that way. And yes, it might take more time. You need to get to know people, but that also creates a much stronger bond than to actually just go around and being like, okay, well, there's this that needs to be done, that needs to be done, and you do that and you do that kind of thing. It's like, it's much more effective when the people that are involved in these things chose to be involved and actually chose to do these things and actually are passionate about that, because then they actually give their all for these things. Even though, sometimes it's also not possible, because, we are just humans after all. But, then also what that creates, the sense of authenticity and, these, and people being empowered in that sense, so that they're not just all just blindly following some leader figure, is that there's this sense of synergy possible regarding these diverse perspectives that also then get brought up. Because that's also a very, very important key factor in this as well. Because, for the Roundtable podcast, for instance, one is only going to get to the truth if one dares to look at diverse perspectives, and if one is like confronted by something, to dare to look at it. It's like it's like, for instance, someone had brought up with me something regarding something I was looking into, the negative anima, and they brought up something about Medusa, and then I looked into that, and then I saw like there's another mythological layer to it, and then I'm like, okay, well, then I'm gonna look into that. And it's kind of that sense that is that's important regarding that, to be able to entertain other perspectives, and to approach them with a sense of respect, to not immediately dismiss these other perspectives. It's like, sure, one things can get heated and in the moment, but it's always good to even if it does, to reflect and to think back at it and be like, okay, well, wait, like, why did I get this angry about this, or like, why did this happen? And to actually look at it and to work towards that, and to understand it. Through this quest of understanding, we we get closer towards this, towards truth, but also towards wholeness. That's where, then also integration and balance comes in. Which also very much, the sense of integration would be also from a Jungian lens, the integration of opposites, but also, can also see it as this integration of these different perspectives to create this synergy, where one transcends these opposites, where there's like this and that perspective, and they're like and there's this tension between, and where one tries to move beyond that, to go to try to find out what's the deeper layer underneath this, and to dig deeper and deeper underneath it, to try to get to the point where the sense of polarity then suddenly becomes like a different thing, where suddenly, for instance, with the whole thing with I don't know, I guess men and women with the negative anima and negative animus, for instance, and this whole this fighting that's going on, where if you just look at that, then that's what you're going to look at. But if you then start to look at the individual level, and you start to realize, and it's something that I've noticed from experience, because I've been involved in the whole cultural war thing myself, which kind of stopped for me, because I actually went to look at the other side, and I actually started to interact with them, and then I started to see like, wait, there's you're all not like these people say you are, and there's like I really like start to interact with each other, and to actually see like, hey, wait, you're acting out of this and this, and like this is actually going on, and start to see like the trauma, for instance, in this particular case that was involved, and then start to realize that, and then being like, wait, are we here acting out all out of trauma here, and we're just bashing each other and just projecting onto each other, and yeah. So that's one. Yeah. So that's an important thing. Flora, it all boils down to the Koryos spec. Well, to some degree, yeah. Regarding this, agree, we need funding. Yeah. 7 is difficult. Equality, it is difficult, very much so. It's something, I guess, to strive for, but it's something that we cannot truly hope to achieve. Not really. There's always differences. We're all, in that sense, not always. But it depends on what you see as equal, because we're not really equal. We're very much equal in the fact that we're not really, because we're all are unique individuals. So in that sense, are we truly equal? No, but we shouldn't strive in that sense. But we should at least try to treat each other as such. Try, even though it's also good to know that even though one can strive for these ideals, that we probably won't be able to always live up to them or even fulfill them. But in that sense, I guess I'm a bit of the optimist here. To be kind, but to at least try to strive for something. So even if we would fail, because we might actually, it's in that sense, like to aim for the stars. Maybe we'll make it to the moon instead. But hey, we actually made it somewhere. That kind of idea. But governance needs 3 things. In a cycle. But yeah, but it also comes comes down like, the shared vision of fostering understanding, harmony, and collaboration. And, there's this shared vision. And also, I feel what is very much important as well, because I've had experience regarding that, being in these different groups where collaboration is not really, maybe internally, but between different groups, and trying to actually work towards a sense of understanding between different groups, and to not see each other as enemies. No, not really. And that's, I guess, also one big thing regarding this as well, is to try to not approach each other in that sense, but to try to approach each other and with this sense of understanding, and try to collaborate, at least with those who are open towards it, and to expand in that sense. But mutual, personal growth and emotional support in that sense also becomes important regarding that with the Koryos pack model as well, and and Project Windhorse. Because the thing is that when one, even with like personal growth, for instance, it's like it's not always. Well, it's not possible to do it alone. Because there's always that sense of support necessary, but we it should be done in that sense to make the person interdependent, to empower them, to actually push them towards their full potential, because we cannot have that. A person becomes dependent upon the model or any of the individuals involved, because in the end there needs to be that sense of mutual growth that's necessary, but also this pushing towards the full potential of the individual, and that they can also eventually start to more and more rely on others outside this model as well, to start to build their own support network, and to build this further out, because only then things will really start to shift. And then finally, equality and egalitarianism. It is very much an ideal to strive for, but one that ultimately is not exactly possible, but still something in the sense of, what you said, Floor, be kind. Yeah, definitely. To try to at least be kind towards each other. Boomstrom. You gotta be cool while other people wanna do crazy stuff to themselves. Might be crazy to them for not being that crazy. But yeah, there needs to be that sense of... But also point 7 also boils down again into this sense of the synergy and diverse perspectives, and the round table idea as well, where we, we do not approach it from the sense of well, you're not this or that, so what you're saying does not count, because it's not always it doesn't really say anything, not really. The sense of some title or whatever status they hold does not make them wise, and the thing is that. And it is very much important to listen to people, no matter where they're coming from, because of as long as they can also extend the same level of respect and understanding as well. Because the thing is that otherwise we start to isolate ourselves, and we become eventually isolated again, which is the entire problem regarding a lot of this politics stuff, and a lot of these elites also, because they become detached from the concerns of the everyday person and the and actually what's going on in the lives of people. And the thing is that it's important to retain that connection, because if we lose that and we start to be only in our own little echo chamber in that sense, then things can go bad, because then we're no longer trying to work towards truth, but then we're just it's starting to go towards an echo chamber, and that becomes all bad, because there needs to be a continued effort towards interacting with people that can also interact in a friendly manner, and to keep doing that, because only then one can get closer towards the sense of truth and wholeness, because we just don't know in that sense ourselves, me included. We just do not know what it is, and the only way how to learn and to keep growing is to keep going in that way, and not to act out in any manner of status driven kind of things, because then one starts to cut oneself off from the whole. That's pretty much what we also talked about already. I have a bunch of slides. And also I want to just highlight a little bit regarding that as well, regarding all this left-right stuff, and for instance as well, you have the conservative archetypes, the warrior, the ruler, the sage, and you can see here, things regarding strength, tradition, protect established values and institutions, embodies authority, control, and the desire for hierarchical structures, values wisdom, experience, and adherence to traditional knowledge. Then you also have here with the progressive archetypes, the rebel, the visionary, and the healer. And you can see with that, desire for change, individual freedom, and the challenge of established norms, innovation, idealism, and focus on the future. The healer, the archetype, empathy, compassion, desire for social justice, promote healing on the individual and societal levels. And the thing is that when it becomes, distorted, these archetypes that start to become, pitted against each other, or really they kind of need each other in that sense. So there can be this dance, it's not the same, archetypes that you saw earlier, but still, there needs to be this dance, like how it is depicted in this mandala. Also, you have Apollo and Artemis, it's the feminine and the masculine in this sense. But there needs to be this dance between these different archetypal energies, where, we are not just one person is the rebel or the visionary or the healer, or, we have many archetypes within ourselves. We're not just one. And we cannot just be fixated upon a singular one. And, we kind of need to be able to, create a dance between that, the structure of the tradition, but also there needs to be that flexibility and that element of death and rebirth, and in this sense of, the questioning of things, because certain things can become rigid and stale, and then they need to be, in that sense, recycled. Because the thing is that when a structure becomes rigid and there's not any sense of renewal there, then that's not good, because the environment is constantly changing, life is constantly changing, and thus our structures need to adapt and evolve with it, and or the way we view things also needs to be able to evolve and change. But then also you can't become very detached either, that it's the rebel going to just get rid of everything either, or the visionary, or in that sense, for instance, that it's like, no, we reject all that came before. That's not good either. But it can't be only the old either. And I kind of feel that's very much one of the things that are going on. But it's not just going on in that sense on a cultural level, but also within ourselves. Because in the end, these are archetypes that are at play, and these archetypes are within our, they are within all of us. And when it comes to, for instance, the warrior or the ruler, for instance, there's nothing wrong with the ruler or the warrior, and neither there's anything wrong with the rebel or the visionary. It's just when these become imbalanced, and when we just only focus on one of them, and that possesses us, or we're just focused on one of them, and we're not dancing, we're not here, we're only here at Zeus, and we're just focused on Zeus the whole time, and we're not going anywhere else, where it starts to become a problem, because then all this other archetypal energies start to fall away into the shadow, because we're just like, no, none of that. And that's a bad, because that's a bad thing, because then things become distorted. And it's when we can dance between it, and we can dance between all of these different energies, that then we can actually start to embody these different archetypes in a more balanced manner, because then it's more balanced out. Much like we need intellect and instinct. We can't just either have only intellect or only instinct. We have both, because we're humans and we have both. And we need to be able to use both. And we have emotions too, and intuition. We need to be able to tap into all of these. Same with the healer, for instance, as well. And we very much reject these things at our own risk. Because the thing is, if we reject that in these others, be like, no, we're not gonna have that, then we push that into the shadow, and it becomes our shadow instead. And then the question becomes, then it becomes this shadow force that acts out in a unknowing manner. Then there can be this distorted stuff happening as well. That it starts to play out in a distorted manner, where it's not actually in a more conscious manner that we work with this archetype. For instance, I don't know, let's say the rebel, for instance, or the visionary. Let's pick the visionary, where the sense of innovation then becomes distorted and goes towards more, very dystopian things, where it's just we go to pod babies and other weird things, where we completely go into the realm of, I guess like intellect, you can say, where we push away the instinctual and the body and all these things, and we just go towards intellect, and we and towards the visionary innovation. Then we start to innovate away, and then move away from everything that's old, and But then we end up rejecting a lot that can still be very useful. So there very much needs to be that balance, and that balance can only be achieved within ourselves. And this is with this mandala. This is within ourselves: intellect, instinct, emotions, intuition. But also these archetypes: the rebel, the visionary, the healer, the warrior, the ruler, the sage. These different archetypes. They are within ourselves, and very much, like I said in the very beginning, to start to deal with all of this division stuff, to start to deal with what's going on, we need to start to deal with what's going on within ourselves. So we need to start to deal with that, and to really go into the depths of the unconscious, to deal with the trauma that's there, to deal with the way we interact with the world, to become aware of that, to become aware of a lot of what's going on, and through that awareness, then we start to grow, and there's a shift in our understanding and the way we see the world. And when it comes to these problems also, it really requires a sense of deep understanding. And this deep understanding is something that's beyond a singular individual. And, we cannot do it alone. And it's kind of like why this sense... Wait, let's see now... Here, with the Koryos pack model, for instance, why that is so important to have this sense of a group, where there's these dedicated people coming together, because this deep understanding can only come when there's multiple people coming together, sharing their own little puzzle piece, who go into the depths of their unconscious and go down all of these different, rabbit hole or weasel holes, how we call them, and to explore different topics and to bring this piece of the puzzle. Because the thing is that if we bring it back all the way, where is it? Here. If we bring it back all the way here, a singular individual is not going to solve all of these issues. It's impossible. The only way how we can solve this is a collective effort, because that's very much the only way how we can do it, because we just don't understand how this complex of a system works. We just don't. We can tackle one problem at a time, but you really need to tackle all of this. But I only bring regarding this only a part of the puzzle. It's the Jungian psychological part, but there's much more going on regarding that as well. Let's say environmental degradation. Well, that's a whole other ballpark. For instance, but it's also something that also needs tackling, and the only way how we can start to tackle these problems is if we stop fighting, if we stop with all this culture war stuff, and we start to sit around the tables, to sit with each other around these round tables and start to talk about these issues, to look inward, to deal with our own problems, and to actually in that sense do what Jordan Peterson started to talk about all this time ago regarding this whole clean your room thing, but actually start to sort it out in a sense of not just cleaning your room, but actually go into the unconscious to heal the trauma that is there, if that is there, to work on that, to work on how we relate to each other, and then relate to the world, and then instead of going with the sense of I know all the solutions to all of this kind of thing, go like, no, I only know a little piece of this puzzle, a little piece of this pie, and is what I can give, and that's that. And then talk to others, and they and this other round table can figure this part out, and we can communicate with each other, and then we can start to actually create this sense of deep understanding of what's going on, because we only can get to that if we start to talk to each other about these things, to go beyond just mere ideology, go beyond all of this. Because then this sense of integration and transformation is also possible. Then we can start to, because that's also another important thing. We need to start to then also integrate this, what we discover, into our own lives, and then into in that sense the grander whole. And then these transformations are also possible, and in a personal individual level, if there's something regarding like trauma that's there, that comes up and needs to be integrated. But there's many more such things going on as well in a more social or collective level, like new understanding of like maybe we don't have to kill all the wolves, we can build this fence, like how Niram likes to talk about, for instance. And it's like, yes, and then we can integrate that, and then things can be transformed in that way. Like we don't have to kill all the wolves, for instance, or we can start to like integrate and transform things slowly, because we figure something out, and then another round table can look at it and also look at like, well, is this applicable here? Yes or no. If it's not, well, then it doesn't work there. But some solutions can work in other areas as well, and some solutions are more applicable on a larger scale than others. But the thing is that very much what I figured is that the problem is too large scale to tackle as an individual, and the only way how we can do that is to work together, and to work on tackling these issues one by one, and to talk about them, for every individual to bring their piece of the puzzle, to bring something, so we can then start to slowly formulate a multi-level approach, where we can tackle the collective shadow in that sense, but also all of these issues at various levels. The individual, the interpersonal, so social, and also the cultural, and with that the environmental, the political as well. We can start to actually solve these issues from grassroots level going up. Because if we go with these top-down approaches, the one big downside regarding that is that we start to, with these one-size-fits-all solutions, we start to lose a lot of resolution. We start to lose a lot of the insights that are actually very much necessary to understand what's going on. Because the thing is, we can't create that on regarding like everything that's going on such a large scale. It's impossible to do that. A singular individual, or like a singular approach. Hence, there really is a need to approach this on a very grassroots level, where people can start to come together and start to figure things out, and then learn from each other, from other roundtable podcasts as well, and to start to, but also not take these things just like that, but to actually look at it and actually start to be like, okay. And in some sense, I guess you could say that it's kind of like what universities ought to do, and I guess maybe are to some degree not doing anymore. But it's something that we can take up as individuals, because that idea is not just for universities. We can do that ourselves as well. We can start to tackle these problems one problem at a time. We can work on figuring things out, like how to heal particular types of trauma, or how to be there for each other, but also to tackle particular problems. Be like, hey, did you think about this? Or hey, did you think about that? Or those kind of things. And it starts to also create a sense of community at the same time as well, which is often not there as well. But what also is important again is authenticity and mutual support as well, which then this sense of community also breeds resilience, where we become more embedded into a greater whole, where we can start to work together, and there's a greater sense of resilience regarding the issues and things that we encounter as well, where we can come together and then we can start to talk to each other, and we have a problem, and we can get our heads together, and we can actually start to think about it, where a singular individual doesn't have to try to solve everything on their own anymore, because there's plenty of people that are smart and know something about something we don't, and in a very smart way. And it would be very good to actually bring these minds together to actually start to solve these issues, and to actually try to solve them at the root. To actually, instead of trying to address the surface level problems, to create this deep understanding, to really go into the depths of something, and to start to really deeply understand something, so we can tackle it in a much more a much deeper way than we generally can now. But also collaboration and safe havens also is very much also a key part of it as well, regarding the Koryos pack model as well, because it is important. Collaboration, yes, there needs to be like both inside such a group, inside such a community. Like collaboration is necessary, but also between these communities, but also the sense of safe haven as well, because we do live in a in a world where we are generally bombarded with all this fear stuff, all this stuff from the media, all this stuff about politics and war and this and that, and it's all piling up. And it's important to have a space away, to create that space, the very least for oneself, to be away from that, to actually be able to take a breather, because we cannot. It's not good for our mental health to be able to be bombarded with this stuff all the time. We need to be able to have a space away, a safe haven away from all this cultural war stuff, from all of this stuff, so we can disconnect from that, and then we can just hang out with people and talk about things, and actually have again human interactions going on, where we're not within this framework of this culture war stuff. And then we can come together as well, to where all of this culture war stuff and all this ideology stuff, this doesn't come to play, or we then can just come together and actually come together with all kinds of different people and be like, okay, well, there's this issue going on here, actual practical issue, and one can start to talk about it, like what's going on there. But regarding that also, regarding these communities, it's also very, very important to make sure one doesn't actually one isn't in a fear cult or ends up creating one. Because even with the idea of the Koryos pack model, yeah, it's possible to also create this us versus them kind of dynamic as well. Eventually, it's a possibility, and it's important always for every individual to be aware of that and how that works. I guess a lot of people are probably aware of how that works. It's very much like how I said. I've written down here. It creates the fear cult, creates an enemy, instills fear of the other group leader, or the group has all the answers. Isolation from outside influence, us versus them mentality, fear-based control, destruction of personal identity, and echo chamber. And it's very much, with the Koryos spec model itself also. Key with that is to really, to try to meet the quote-unquote enemy as a human. To actually to start to interact with each other as humans again. Also within something like the Koryos spec model, to encourage intellectual humility and continual learning, and to encourage the exploration of ideas. Hence, also the Roundtable podcast, to explore ideas, even if they can seem, maybe. I guess something that's not, if one would think about in the lens of ideological frameworks, it falls outside of it, but it's still important to start to encourage the exploration of ideas, no matter if they fall within some framework or not. But also to very much facilitate this sense of that there's space for trauma healing, or at least very much that that people within said group are actually working on that and are empowering each other, because also that's very much also counters that to empower each other and to think critically, and to not just take things as it is what some group leader or whatever person says, no matter who they are. And also in that sense to encourage personal growth as well, to encourage authenticity for people to become, who they are, and to not impose anything upon each other, and to very much to work on that, and to have these equal roundtable discussions, to actually, it doesn't even have to be recorded, but just to sit together as equals, and to actually not impose things upon each other, to be to let someone explore a particular idea, to just be okay, well, let's explore this idea, and to it doesn't mean that one has to just go along with everything either, in the sense of that you have to just accept everything that what comes up. But there's a sense of curiosity is very much necessary to come out of this kind of fear cult mentality, to really come out of this sense of polarization mentality, to very much to start to tackle that. But also, this sense of, with the trauma healing as well, so we can start to see each other as humans again, to realize, to start to see regarding behaviors that people do, that maybe these behaviors are stemming from something deeper, even though there can be very shitty behaviors, and we cannot tolerate these behaviors, and we also need to think about our own well-being. But the thing is that it's more about to be like, okay, well, these behaviors can't tolerate that, but we should not completely should not, like, I guess in that sense, create this us versus them kind of mentality, though, out of it. Because, we can still understand, like, okay, that maybe some people are coming out of this sense of trauma, or like they went through these particular things, so they're acting in this particular manner, and we can understand that. But we shouldn't like put our own well-being at risk either. But there's still, through that understanding, we can still be like, okay, so we can still understand it, so that through that understanding, the very least, we can then stay clear of this us versus them mentality, and we don't end up creating just yet another fear cult. Because when we start to do that, when we start to push these particular things into the shadow, and also with unintegrated instincts, for instance, and there's these particular things in the shadow regarding that, for instance, due to trauma, due to just cultural influences, and there's the shadow there, and we're not working on it, and we're just projecting it outward onto the world, and we're onto the other, then what ends up happening is eventually the shadow kind of eats away at the heart, at the sense of the compassion, the wholeness that's there. And then what ends up happening is that we have this sense of emptiness that we can feel, the sense of soul loss, that we will be going much deeper into in an upcoming live stream, but also very much is this loss of compassion for each other, for even this quote unquote enemy, or this whatever label you can replace it with. Really, it's really much any label, and it's to still have this, because the thing is that once we start to lose that, once we and the shadow kind of like starts to seep into our hearts, and we start to see these people as the other or whatever, we start to create these fear cults. We start to create this us versus them mentality, and then we dive into this sense of division again, which only can end up very much perpetuating the very problem that's there. Because the thing is, it's because coming from the lens of I have this ideology, or I have, or like or whatever, and this is the solution, and seeing these other people as the sense of other is actually, it's not a good thing, not at all, because it just plays into the sense of division, and it just plays into that where it increases this division further and further and further, and then there's this increase of these problems, and that affects everyone else as well, and affects oneself, where all of this spirals out of control eventually. And then eventually Ares says hey, and it's very much about reconnecting with that sense of this sense of compassion, and that's only from what I found from experience only possible if we really start to work on our own trauma, on what's in the shadow. If we actually start to look at that, and if we start to look at that, then we can work towards integrating what's there, and we can start to slowly see the other as actually like, hey, maybe they're actually humans, and hey, maybe even though they do these fucked up behaviors, maybe I should not be approaching them with this sense of anger and hate, because it's bad for ourselves as well to approach these things out of that lens, because we don't see things clearly. We end up blinding ourselves. It's like, in the end, we poke each other's eyes out, and then we leave the world blind, and that's not a good thing, not at all. It's only in that sense by opening each other's eyes through this sense of mutual understanding, and actually trying to get out of Plato's cave, to actually look at the to look at the shadow, and to look at the deeper layers that are there, that we can get out of this, sense of division. We can get out of these different problems that just happen. Because I don't know if you've noticed, like everyone who is listening, it doesn't really seem like anything really has changed. It's like maybe it has become worse in some sense, but then there's particular issues that are still going on, and it's still not solved. And then at some point we need to start to wonder, like, well, why is that? Why is this? Is it still getting worse and worse and worse? And it's with a lot of these problems. It's and regarding that, often from what I've found is that it's because we're not actually tackling the real issues. We're just so swamped up in this sense of fighting the shadows that we project onto the world, that we're actually not addressing the deeper root cause of what's going on. It's same with, for instance, all these environmental issues too. It's like we're so, with that, for instance, so focused on there's so much focus on CO2 and all kinds of emissions and all kinds of stuff that the whole focus on, I don't know, maybe like for instance planting trees, or like just doing very sensible things like that, get lost and get more into the shadow, even though there's still plenty of people that do that, luckily. But the thing is that there's also a lot of, like, us versus them kind of mentality with it as well, where then one starts to wonder, it's like, yeah, but that's not actually solving the problem. We need to, that's where all this comes in. We need to start to, as individuals, come together and start to tackle these things ourselves, on an individual level and a collective level, by having these different groups come together to create a sense of a mycelium network of these different groups, these different roundtable podcasts, these different Koryos packs, these different communities in whatever sense, that come together to work on these issues, to drop all of this ideological stuff, and actually look at things from a human lens, to look at each other as humans, to actually be like, okay, well, what are the human needs that are there? What's the environmental issues that are going on, like actually going on, like what's lacking, how was it, how is it now, and actually, like, what can we just do to improve that, to, I don't know, bring back diversity of nature, for instance, or for instance work on healing trauma, and actually provide what a lot of individuals need. It's similarly with a lot of kids, for instance, after all this COVID stuff, where they've become so enmeshed with their parents and with, because everyone got so cooked up together, it created this sense of enmeshment, in this sense of feeling very much suffocated, which is very natural, both for the parents and for the kids, where then what's then happening is this intensification of these parental complexes, and then there's also a lot of other stress and small t trauma that's also there, which isn't addressed. And then, and there's this sense of individuality and this potential that then gets lost as well. And and I've seen plenty of posts regarding that on LinkedIn as well from different psychologists and doctors as well, where they go into that as well in this very issue. But they talk then about emotional intelligence, for instance, and resilience. And we need to teach these things in university or something, or college. But it again then starts to leave the underlying issue not addressed, which is the small t trauma that needs to be worked through. And in that sense, to reconnect ourselves back to instinct and the self, and to reconnect us back to this sense of compassion as well for ourselves and for each other, and to create this network, this mycelium network, and this sense of community again that we're sorely lacking in this world, and what we really could need, and also could form very much the basis of how we can start to solve a lot of problems that are there in a very small scale way, because it is very individual, and it affects the individual, all these things. And if we, through individual effort and then group effort and a more and more collective effort, start to tackle these issues on a very in that sense grassroots level, we can actually start to address these issues in a much more effective manner than that we can do if we try to think of some one-size-fits-all solution and being this is it, and which is actually not addressing the intricate nature of the issues that are at play. And with that said, I really encourage everyone to become part of this mycelium network, even though it doesn't even have to be in any official sense, but to run away with this sense of idea, to create your own group of individuals, to create your own roundtable podcast or roundtable community or anything of the sorts, to come together to talk about what's going on. It's even if it's just on a personal level and just personal issues regarding small t trauma or just whatever issue, and to talk about these things, put our heads together, and to actually start to work on these issues one thing at a time. And then we can start to tackle these bigger issues later on as well, if we start to work together in this way. And I feel that it's the only real way to tackle it at the root, and to really plant a new tree in that sense, to plant a new tree that can actually sprout, and that reconnects us back to our own roots, to each other. And with that said, I want to end this stream.